Hello YouTube friends, Dustin Bellinger here, and I'm doing a contest response video for Bowman53. Congratulations Alex on your milestone, and he asked us to do a 50 showcase, and well, Alex, anybody that didn't want a long video, this is your fault because you gave me an excuse to start going on a showcase, and this long video is for you. So, first off, he wanted us, as part of our showcase, to kind of do an acknowledgement of kind of pop culture at the time as well. So, I'll start here with the year 1950, and the Academy Award winner for Best Picture was All the King's Men. And according to Billboard magazine, the number one song of 1950 was Goodnight Irene by Leadbelly. Now in 1950, the American League MVP was Yankee shortstop Phil Rizzuto, and the National League MVP was Jim Constanti. And in the 1950 World Series, we had the Yankees versus the Phillies. So both MVPs of the leagues represented there, and the Yankees swept the series 4-0. Now, your main card set of the 1950 year is the 1950 Bowman. Now, this set was a little bit smaller than our traditional cards that we're used to today, kind of similar to kind of the gum cards, and Bowman was pretty much the big dog on the street at this time. They didn't have really any competition as far as there being any other major distributors of baseball cards at the time. There were a few smaller companies doing some things, but at the time they were the most recognized, and they'd been distributing cards for, this would be their third year now. Now, along with Bowman, 1950 was the first year that Callahan Hall of Fame sets started being distributed, and these were like a box set that featured the current members of the Hall of Fame, and this set would be updated each year with adding the new members of the Hall of Fame. And so as it went along from 1950 through 1956, each year it would add a few extra cards into the set as more cards or more players and executives and such were inducted. And those later inductees tend to be the more exclusive and short printed cards in the set. Another set that existed in 1950 here, this was a strip card set, which featured a number of players. It had multiple back variations. Obviously, these were extremely small in size, and they were distributed in long strips of 10, I believe. This doesn't really have a manufacturer name or anything. It's just kind of known under its catalog designation of R423. And so then moving on to 1951, where Best Picture was won by All About Eve, starring Bette Davis, and the top song of the year was Too Young by Nat King Cole. Then the 1951 MVPs featured a pair of catchers, Roy Campanella from the Brooklyn Dodgers And Yogi Berra from the New York Yankees was the American League MVP. Your World Series that year featured two teams from New York, the New York Yankees and the New York Giants. And the Yankees again won the series, this time in 6 games. So in 1951, Bowman changed the shape of their card, as you can see, a little rather than more of a square design. It went to more rectangular, a little bit larger in overall size, but still, smaller than the standard cards that we're used to today. And this marked the year that they had some major competition with the very first release of baseball cards by the Topps Gum Company. And so the 51 Topps set featured 2 different series, one with a red back and the other with a blue. So they're commonly known by either Topps red backs or Topps blue backs in 51. A lot of people, kind of assume or believe that 52 was the first issue of Topps due to its iconic status, but it was actually predated by this kind of forgotten 51 set. Moving on to 1952, the best picture was An American in Paris, and the song of the year was Blue Tango by Leroy Anderson. And your MVPs of the leagues there were Hank Sawyer for the National League and Bobby Shantz for the American League. Your World Series again featured the New York Yankees, this time going against the Brooklyn Dodgers. And the Yankees were able to win in 7 games. Now, this year, the 52 Bowman design stayed roughly the same as they did in 51. While Topps, on the other hand, went with a large expanded format that is actually slightly larger than the cards we're used to today. Definitely making a big push into the market, trying to eat into the Bowman's market share. It really went with, an expanded design, more colors, and definitely, more of a fancy and expensive looking design and set. Now, along with the Bowman and Topps sets, Redmond Tobacco began distributing cards as a premium with the purchase of their tobacco pouches. And each pouch of tobacco would have a card wrapped in cellophane with the pouch, and the card would have a tab that you can see that's on the 1952 Leo DeRocher in the image there. That tab could be detached like it has been on the Willie Mays card, and those could be redeemed for a hat for your favorite team. So the ones, these tobacco cards are, certainly more valuable if you have them in high grade with the tab still on them as opposed to it detached. Now, Redmond Tobacco would distribute cards for 4 years from 52 through 55, and so this was their first year in that market. Another competitor that had been around for a couple of years, but really wasn't a significant threat to either of the major Bowman or Topps brands was Burke Ross. Their cards, had lower quality images. The card stock was not as good, and they were often sold in strips that had to be detached from each other. And so, while there's certainly some interesting cards from the era, at this time they just weren't nearly as popular as their Topps and Bowman counterparts. Moving on to 1953, the Best Picture went to Cecil B. DeMille's The Greatest Show on Earth. And Song of the Year was The Song from Moulin Rouge by Percy Faith and his orchestra. Now, your MVPs that year featured Roy Campanella winning his second National League MVP, and Al Rosen for the Cleveland Indians. Your World Series again featured a rematch of the Yankees and Dodgers, and this time the Yankees were able to seal it in 6 games. Now, with the added competition from Topps, Bowman decided for their 1953 issue they would unveil full color photographs and a larger design that would try and push back against their rivals' encroachment into their market. And so you've got one of the most beautiful sets in the history of cards, and one that's quite special to our contest host, Mr. Bowman53. Now, unfortunately, this set was rather expensive, and Bowman did kind of have to give up on the full color photos, and for the later series of the Bowman line for that year, they reverted back to only black and white images, and so these are classified as a different set, the Bowman Black and White from 1953. While Topps, once again, was going with a big card design, and with their design that year, they still were going with, rather than color photographs, they were doing colored just artwork images as well, still at this time period. But they were gaining larger and larger market shares and going with a legal battle against Bowman that eventually they would manage to win. Now, in 1954, the Picture of the Year was From Here to Eternity, and the Song of the Year was Little Things Mean a Lot by Kitty Callan. And your MVPs were Willie Mays for the National League. I don't show a card because I don't have a 1954 Willie Mays card, so I wasn't going to show any cards in this showcase that don't belong to me. So, and then the American League MVP was once again Yogi Berra, so second MVP for him. Now, your World Series this year, finally we've got one that doesn't feature the New York Yankees. It featured the Cleveland Indians versus the New York Giants, and the New York Giants would sweep the Indians in 4 games. And so, in the world of cards, Bowman was sticking with color photos here for 1954 and released a very beautiful set, once again with a large oversized card design, while Topps was pushing the envelope again, and for the first time incorporated photos, real photos, into their cards. And so, well, you did have a photo. It was placed on a colored backdrop as well. So it's not a full color photograph on the card design, but photographs were actually incorporated. Now, you also had your Red Man tobacco being distributed again, like I talked about earlier. And you start getting into a lot more of your regional sets and sets that were part of different promotional types of giveaways and advertising, where different companies were trying to use baseball and baseball cards as a marketing tool for selling their products. And one of those companies was Red Heart Dog Food, which released a beautiful baseball card set there in 1954. And another company that was doing the same was Dandy Potato Chips, and it featured a number of players from the New York area, and included this one here of Monty Irving. And another company was the Dixie Creamery, which had their Dixie Lids promotion revived. This went for a couple of years during the 50s. It was kind of a rebirth of a promotional program that they did back in the late 30s as well. And if you look here on this, this ice cream lid has an advertisement that tells how that you can redeem these lids for a 3D viewer. And that 3D viewer could be used to, if you placed the cards into it and looked through the viewer, it would make the image appear to be a three-dimensional image. So kind of a cool concept at the time. Moving on to 1955, our Academy Award winner for Best Picture was On the Waterfront, starring Marlon Brando. And Song of the Year, Cherry Pink and Apple Blossom White by Perez Prado. And our MVPs, once again, dueling catchers here, each winning his third MVP. Roy Campanella for the Brooklyn Dodgers and Yogi Berra of the New York Yankees. And the World Series once again rematched the Yankees and Dodgers. This time the Brooklyn Dodgers were able to win their first world title in 7 games. And this also marked the first year that the award for World Series MVP was established. And that first MVP award went to Johnny Padres of the Brooklyn Dodgers. And this ended up being the last year for Bowman baseball cards, who went with a horizontal card design this year with the wood panel TV images into their sets. You'll notice some of the cards featured a darker wood paneling, and others kind of a lighter brown to it. Just different series. The first series had this lighter paneling colored, and then the later had the darker paneling. So, and also an interesting part of the 53 Bowman set for Hall of Fame collectors is they had incorporated a number of the current umpires at the time and other executives, and so these allow some of your Hall of Fame collectors to be able to get contemporary cards of a number of umpires that were inducted into the Hall of Fame from this era, including Jocko Conlon and Al Barlock, among others. Now, in this 1955, Topps also had their design in a horizontal layout, and as you can see, still going with a little bit larger than average card design as far as size, and once again going with a combination of photos and illustrations to create the cards. And this would mark the last year for Redmond Tobacco as well, distributing cards there with their 1955 offering. Now, 1955, there was also a Golden Stamps set, which was kind of a team set for the Brooklyn Dodgers. These were designed to be placed into a stamp album, but still kind of contemporary to our standard baseball cards. And if you're looking for a contemporary card of Jackie Robinson, his 55 Golden Stamps card is one of the most affordable to be had. Now, 1956, the best picture was Marty, and Elvis had the Song of the Year with Heartbreak Hotel. Now, our National League MVP in 1956 was Don Newcomb of the Brooklyn Dodgers and Mickey Mantle of the New York Yankees. And 1956 marked the first year of the Cy Young Award, and at this time it was for the best pitcher in all of baseball. They didn't separate it out by league at this point, and the Cy Young winner for that year was Don Newcomb. And once again, we had a rematch of the Yankees and Dodgers in our World Series. And this this being the year the Yankees would win in 7 games, and with Don Larson being named the World Series MVP, strongly due to his perfect game no-hitter that he pitched during the series. Now, without any competition from Bowman that year, Topps, still had a little bit larger design, but and kept the horizontal layout to their cards again. Now, for 1957, your best picture was Around the World in 80 Days, and Elvis once again took Song of the Year with All Shook Up. Your MVPs for the leagues were Hank Aaron for the National League and Mickey Mantle again for the American League. Your Cy Young winner for 1957 was Warren Spahn. So, as you might imagine, based on those award winners, your World Series featured a matchup between the Yankees and the Braves, and the Braves won in 7 games. And despite the stars of that Braves pitching staff being Warren Spahn and Sane, Lou Burdett took home the World Series MVP award with tremendous number of starts against his opponents in that series. And now with their competition from Bowman behind them, Topps scaled down their card size just slightly, and this size for their 57 offering has become the standard size that they've used for every year since then. Now in 1958, our picture of the year was the bridge on the River Kwai, and the song of the year was Volare. And your league MVPs were Ernie Banks for the National League and Jackie Jensen for the American League. Your Cy Young Award winner was the Yankees pitcher Bob Turley. Your World Series was a rematch of the previous year's Yankees and Braves, this time with the Yankees winning in 7 games. And Bob Turley, the Cy Young winner, was also the World Series MVP that year. Now, the 58 Topps included color photos with solid colored backgrounds. And also a significant part of the set was the very first All-Star subset being included within a Topps set. You can see there the Luis Aparicio would be an example of that. The American League All-Stars in that set were featured with a red background, and the National League All-Stars with a blue background. Now, at this time period, a lot of your team-issued and stadium-issued items were starting to gain in popularity. This one here is an example of a 1958 through 62 J Publishing photo. These would often be distributed in team sets that were available to order either possibly through the mail, but many times purchased there at the stadium. And getting on to end the decade here in 1959, our picture of the year was Gigi, and the song of the year was Johnny Horton's The Battle of New Orleans. Now your MVPs for 1959 were the Cubs' Ernie Banks with back-to-back MVPs, and Nellie Fox of the Chicago White Sox. So all Chicago MVPs, and to top it off, it was a banner year for the Chicago teams, as Early Wynn took home the Cy Young Award. And the White Sox would face the Brooklyn Dodgers in the World Series. And this is the first and only World Series during the decade that does not feature a team located in the city of New York, as Dodgers by this point had moved to Los Angeles. And the Dodgers would win this World Series in 6 games, claiming their first World Series title after moving from Brooklyn. And the World Series MVP that year was Larry Sherry. Unfortunately, the major Topps decided not to create a card for Larry that year, so unfortunately I don't have one to show, and I don't know that there's even a card that was made in 1959 for him that even exists. But if there is one that I'm not aware of, somebody wants to bring it to my attention, please let me know, because I'd love to try and track one down. Now the top set that year was kind of a similar theme to the 58, but rather than a full solid background with just the outline of the player in color, you have a color photo inset in a circle on the card, so kind of a subtle change in design from 58 to 59, something that Topps, has been prone to do for a long time now, where they kind of get into a rut in their design and you don't get significant design changes from year to year a lot of times from them, where things will really stay similar for a good run of a couple of seasons sometimes. So that was 1959. They did continue their All-Star subset, although did away with kind of the colored stars background. And for 1959, everything had the same colors and design, with the kind of the shield and the eagle, which you see with the Nellie Fox example there. But the subset did live on, even though I just don't think that the design for that 59 was near as captivating as 58 was. So there it is. And then 59 also marked the start of Fleer's insertion into the market for a brief time period. They created a set in 1959 entirely dedicated to Ted Williams, and so this here is one example from that set, and they would continue to produce a few more sets into the 60s, but that is a story for another video. So thank you everybody who stuck through and watched all of my 50s showcase. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you all again another time. Thank you. Goodbye.